Ryan, first off, man, appreciate your time. Honored to have you on the show. So welcome.
Thank you, Malcolm. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So, to kick it off, man, you've been in the investing and wealth management space for over 25 years. You've had some success. Could have kicked your feet up, laid back and chilled, but you decided to get into sports ownership and the business of sports. So, can you kind of
Yeah.
talk about that journey, that transition, and why now was the right timing for you?
Yeah, it kind of kicked off for me in 2018. I made a decision to retire from wealth management and go to work for a startup in the Bay Area. And I think I was at that point in my career where I'd been in that business for 22 years and certainly could have stayed there. But I got the bug to go build something. And a friend of mine had founded a company that had a presence in Seattle where I live and then also in the Bay Area. And so I spent 3 years at a startup. It took me about a year to kind of unwind my wealth management business, but I spent almost 3 years at the other startup, and it was just one of those experiences being around that kind of environment where you're building from scratch. I had done that for my career, but doing it on a larger scale was really, really fun. And I met a lot of incredible people, learned a ton. And when COVID happened, that business kind of slowed down and I left. And I was essentially trying to decide what my next pivot was. And the opportunity to take a look at Spokane popped up for me at the beginning of 2022 when the stadium was approved for construction and they started to break ground. And that's what caught my eye. I was already a soccer fan. That was the sport I played growing up. And so um, Spokane is a big sports town. I grew up there. Live sports gets a lot of attention here. There's a minor league baseball team here, minor league hockey, Gonzaga basketball kind of put the city on the map with hoops. And it's just I looked at the opportunity as something. First of all, I just made a curiosity call. It's one of these things where you make a phone call to find out who'd be crazy enough to put a pro soccer team in Spokane, and because it's a big project. And
Yeah.
so I made one phone call mostly to find out, who the USL was talking to locally about ownership, because I kind of know Spokane's a big place, but it's very small circles, and I kind of know everybody here. Even though I live in Seattle, we're here all the time, and so what that phone call turned into another phone call, and the next thing I know, USL was flying out to Seattle to have lunch with us and talk about it. Because for me, knowing what I knew about Spokane and um, how I understood how these clubs impact the communities where they
Yeah.
are, I just felt like this was a no-brainer. And mostly, when I walked down the hall and told my wife I was going to go buy an expansion club in the USL and put it in Spokane, I told her that I wanted to put a women's team here too. And the women's team, Super League in the USL hadn't even started yet. It was still was further along than being just a concept, but it wasn't going to launch for a year at least. And so, when we approached USL about this whole conversation, it was driven in large part to the fact that we wanted a women's asset in the club as well. So we have
Yeah.
both. So that's how it started. And that was just over 3 years ago. And now we're kicking off our second season for the men, and our women's Super League season is nearing its first year's conclusion. We operate on the international calendar. So the women's team finishes up in the spring and then starts again in August. So,
That's major. That's major. From a high level perspective, for people who might not understand how the USL works, can you kind of break down because they have like
sure.
the different leagues and kind of I don't know if you want to call them departments underneath the umbrella, but it's
Yeah.
very different from how the MLS would be structured.
Yeah, so the MLS is a single entity league, right? So it's a closed league. It's got one ownership structure that the league, basically has control of these teams. USL operates as an expansion league with franchises, and so owners in the USL at the Championship League level, which is Division Two. MLS is Division One. Division Two is USL Championship League. There's 24 teams across the country in that league, and then our team locally in Spokane is in League One, which is Division Three, fully professional. They also have basically pre-pro leagues for men and women, mostly just college players in W League for the women, and League Two is the men's league. And those two leagues have 125, 130 teams apiece competing for about a 10-week season. It's basically a place where college players come back and play when they're not in school. And then there's a youth network and an academy network through USL. So USL is the largest professional soccer organization in North America. I mean, and they're growing very rapidly. Super League was sanctioned Division One by U.S. Soccer, and when we all launched Super League, with there was 8 clubs that had the inaugural season this year. We worked with USL for Division One sanction because we all felt like it was really important to be at that same level as the NWSL. The NWSL has a 14-year head start on USL Super League, but we're we've learned a lot through observation, and standing up this league was the next really critical piece for USL and kind of broadening their investment into the women's game. And then, as you probably know, we passed promotion and relegation as a resolution a couple months ago. That kind of we've been working on that for a year and a half, 2 years. Finally got it to a place where all the owners were on the same page with wanting to move that forward. That was a historic vote. There's a lot of work to be done between now and 2028. But once that vote was made possible by the fact that USL made the decision to launch a Division One league, which
Mhm.
will sit right next to MLS. So we've got to have 3 professional men's leagues in the pyramid in order for ProRel to work, right?
Yeah.
So there'll be movement between the 3 divisions every year. So the first year that we'll see that happen is likely to be 2028. So
Got you.
and
Okay.
there's plenty to do in the meantime. So
Yeah, for
to get
sure.
it, yeah, yeah.
Obviously you have the background in finance, but when you look at making that transition into sports ownership, what was the biggest thing that was surprising to you about, like, from an operational standpoint and like getting your hands, dirty?
It's chaotic, man. And not just, at the club level, in these local clubs. I mean, pro sports, I think is much less organized than you'd think, and much less standardized. Though because the USL is a franchise system, every club operates differently, right? We have a different cost model because of where we are in the country, being in the Northwest. We spend a lot more on travel. So some of the biggest surprises are really on the expense side, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify all of the things that we spend money on to have 2 teams that are professional teams, the standards that we have for ourselves, that the league that we all agreed to abide by, with player care and everything else. I think the expense side of things was the biggest shock to me. Um, but you plan for that. I mean, these clubs, no clubs really, make money. I mean, they're on an operating basis. It's very hard to be profitable right now in the USL because our league is still growing. Um, we're not at the same place as MLS is with a huge media deal, right?
Yeah.
So we most of our revenue into the club comes locally through our games, and we'll host almost 40 events at our 5,000 seat stadium this year. So it's busy, but probably on the expense and operations side. Uh, I spent 25 years understanding how business is operated, but I don't think anything can truly prepare you for pro sports at this level. And we just have a double dose of it because we've got Division One women and we've got Division Three men with the opportunity to move them up and down in that pyramid. And it's the machine that we have to do that is always changing and morphing. We try to be very efficient with our club. We have a great staff, and with players and technical staff and front office, we have about 100 people that work for our organization full time. So
What's the
a lot of
strategy
people doing
behind?
a lot of things.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely like a startup. Everybody kind of wears multiple hats and
Yep.
tries
Yep.
to try to figure things out day by day. But when you think about like building a strong fan base, that's the essence of what makes sports work,
Yep.
fandom. So what's kind of the strategy behind that for you guys? Like, is there? I know you talked about the events, but do you get like additional support from like the top of the league or like or the I guess the USL headquarters?
Yeah, they do, but mostly it's local. The USL has to define their own brand as a national league, right? So they have their own strategy that they're employing. On a local level, our biggest challenge is educating fans, right? I remember when we had 5,000 people at our home opener, right? It was 65 degrees in March. Stadium was full. Spokane had never seen a professional soccer game before. Okay. It was really interesting to watch how the fans reacted to different parts of the game. Um, and, for a lot of people, this is the first time they've ever seen it. Maybe some people have gone to a Seattle Sounders game, it's only a 4 hour drive from here, right? But being in a stadium like ours where you feel so close to the pitch, it's really, really a powerful experience and it's a ton of fun. I think most of our fans didn't know they didn't really know the cues, like when to boo at a ref or when to cheer, and so 3 or 4 games into the season, we started seeing people become more comfortable with how to kind of react and enjoy the game in a different way. So it's fan education for us is the biggest thing. It's like, you know, just getting the word out there. Everybody knows that we're in town, but getting them to a game is really critical to help build that fan engagement that needs to kind of run the engine of what we have, because our revenues are from ticketing and partnerships and merchandise sales, and eventually we get player transfer fee revenue that comes into play, and that's a couple years down the road for us. But until then, our revenue is largely local, so it's building our brand is critical. And we've done that by really, really engaging in the community outside of the game days. I mean, Katie and I did this project because we knew what it could be if we treated it like a community asset. And so our players and staff on both teams and in our front office spend a lot of time in the community volunteering. We're in schools all the time. We spend a ton of time with kids. So, we've created a really strong brand already after just 1 year, and we kind of are at the top quartile in the league for attendance and season ticket sales and everything else. And so we're pretty high performing for a young club. And the fact that we did it with 2 teams, not one,
Yeah.
is kind of unbelievable. So
Yeah, it's really hard. Can you break down the I guess the revenue, the business model and revenue streams a little bit more from like a percentage standpoint? Like what does that look like? Because obviously you
yeah,
look at the big four leagues, they primarily are driven by media rights, but for you
yeah.
guys it's different.
Yeah,
So what does
we
that look like?
we do have a little bit of media revenue that comes in, but right now we cover our costs of broadcasting to a large degree. So our revenue comes from, I would call it 3 main areas. Ticketing is probably 40%. Partnerships are probably another 30%, 35%. The remaining is merch sales, which we do a fair amount of that at game day, and we have a team store here in Spokane. So those are our 3 main areas. And then maybe there's what, 5 or 10% of other, we could call other player transfer fee revenue, league broadcast or league deals that maybe have some revenue flow through to us, league partnership deals. And those are growing. Super League, as a great example, just announced that they sold their entitlement naming rights to a big financial services company, Gamebridge. So it's now called Gamebridge Super League for next year. So those are things as the league matures and pulls in these bigger national deals, and we have more eyeballs on our games all the time. I mean, our men's games are on ESPN Plus and CBS Galazo, and there's some nationally televised games on CBS as well. We had one last year here in Spokane. We have another one this summer that's going to be nationally televised. So, and then the women's games are all streamed on Peacock. So, we get pretty good traction from those broadcasts as well. So, but right now, we don't have a media rights deal that's, covering a lot of our stuff. That will
Yeah.
eventually happen. And the league has been pretty strategic about how they've signed their media deals. And they're coming due over the next 2 years, right around World Cup time. And soccer in this country, as you know, is in for like the next 5 or 6 years. It's kind of crazy with the World Cup here, and then the Women's World Cup coming here in 5 years, six
Yeah.
years. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Obviously, there's a ton of institutional capital coming into sports as a whole. How does that impact the USL at all, especially with the franchise model? Does that help you guys in any type of way? Like, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
100%. I mean, the barrier to entry to get into an MLS ownership situation is like it's just not going to happen unless you're, you know, a sovereign wealth fund or
Yeah,
a big, big, big private equity fund. Those those positions just aren't really taken anymore. The valuations are too high. It used to be sports ownership was a trophy asset for billionaires, right? And now the leagues have loosened rules on private equity ownership, as you know, and it's kind of democratized in sports investing. So how we think about it is, for the first 2 years, let's say, of our project, we largely invested our own capital, and we have about 15 owners in our ownership group. And I've made that fairly public on different forums when our investors allow it. But we are now in the process of going out and talking to the larger investors, because we're kind of at the stage in our business where we're going to go out and find a larger capital partner who wants to be with us for a while. So kind of that friends and family money that we raised over the last couple of years to launch the club, we're now moving into that next phase. And there's a lot of appetite for it, as you said. I mean, especially in the USL, because people recognize that pro rel is going to change the landscape of soccer in this country. And true soccer fans understand that you've got to have a game of consequence, right? Not knocking the MLS, because those games can be very entertaining as well, especially the regional rivalries. But they're not really playing for the same type of thing, right? There's no jeopardy in MLS of being, dropped down to a lower division, and it's going to take a long time for this to be adopted in the right way. But the real soccer fans will appreciate, this process. And it'll just blow up the fan engagement and fandom for the USL. And that's why investors want to be part of it, right? And
Yeah.
the women's league, again, same thing with the women's league, right? NWSL, you've got franchises in the NWSL selling for $120 million just to come in the door. And you've
Yeah.
also got to go build a $200 million stadium along with that. And you also have to have 50 million in cash to get things rolling. Those are really big barriers. The cost of launching one of our clubs is expensive. I mean, but it's not 500 million. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and so the USL model is very popular, still affordable, although franchise values are really, really going up. And that's a good thing for investors. It's what investors want long term. So that's been good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Kind of taking a step back, you talked about how challenging and how many responsibilities come with being a sports team owner. Like, what does the day to day look like for someone like you who has to
Yeah.
constantly deal with multiple stakeholders in aspects of the franchise?
It's pretty wild. I mean, there's no time off in pro sports, as you know. It's like, if you have we live in Seattle, okay, but we have a business in Spokane. We're here every week. So I manage the entity that manages our club. So Aequus Sports is our you can call it a holding company, but it's not really structured that way. But it's basically a private equity fund that I manage, and so we own the club. I talked my wife 18 months ago into leaving Amazon. She had been there for 7 years, and she was running North America consumer marketing when I kind of asked her to come over and become the president of the club. And so her and I are tackling the day to day, right? We have a lot of people on the ground here and doing a lot of different things. And so our days are busy talking to coaches, partners, corporate sponsors, and managing pretty active teams across the verticals that we have. There's never nothing going on. And when our teams go on the road, it gives people in our office in Spokane a little bit of breathing room when the teams are on the road, because it's like everybody can take a deep breath and know that they're not running. Like this weekend, we have a double header, right? We have the women playing Saturday and the men playing Sunday, and we have that again next weekend. So for the next 10 days, it's total chaos around here, right? We have
Yeah.
game prep. We have teams coming into town from Oakland. Oakland Roots from the Championship League are coming up here to play in the Jägermeister Cup game. We've got Tampa Bay coming in for the women's game on Saturday, and then we do it again with two other teams the following weekend. So all of that is just very, very busy, and a lot can go really right, and then some things can go wrong. But we have a really good staff, and our soccer ops people are top notch, and they do an amazing job. And our stadium is state of the art and probably a top five venue across all USL teams. Our stadium is brand new, and our club invested $4 million into that stadium of our own money to up level it, put in premium hospitality areas, video board. We've made it feel not like a municipal stadium, which is what it was built it was designed to be that way originally because it was a school bond that funded it. We kind of dressed it up with a pretty significant investment to give it a great commercial feel. So
Yeah.
it's a great game day experience. So all of that said, it's like being a camp counselor. My wife and I met as summer camp counselors, and it's you just never know what's going to happen during the day. You
Yeah.
just don't know. It's mostly trying to control things, but you're never going to have full control. And so then it's about reacting and making decisions really quickly. And we have some really, really good people who are there to help us make those decisions. So
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, you and your wife are the managing partners for the firm that owns the teams. But what does that decision making process looks like when it comes to the other owners? Like, are they kind of involved in the day to day as well?
no, but like we have a partner. We have a main investor partner of ours. And then the one thing that we've tried to do is when we go to people, especially when this was nothing but something on paper that we were showing people what it could look like. You go ask someone for $1 million and you tell them about your vision and they give it to you. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility that we feel that we have to them, to the community, to everybody. And for that, they have no operational responsibility whatsoever. However, because they believed in us, I'm very, very interested in having them involved in the club in any way that they want to be. For some reason, about 75% of our investors are lawyers, which is nice. But we try to have a diverse ownership groups where we've got people from all sorts of industries that can pitch in, give us advice. I lean on them all the time. And they're able to spend time around the club and our staff and our teams. They're an incredible group of people who really did this knowing that they were putting their money away for a very long time with an unknown return date, if at all. And so I love having owners that Katie and I talk to them all the time. And so if you're in our investor group, you're not here and not ever hearing from us. We do events, we do town hall meetings with our coaches. If they come into town for games, we try to do dinners. So we're pretty active ownership group, and they're an incredible group of people.
That's amazing. What
Yeah,
what would you say is the long term vision for Equal Sports? Is it to expand into other maybe sports, or even are you looking at like league ownership, or what does that
I'm
kind of
a
look?
I'm a huge believer in like learning to crawl before you walk, right? And I've seen a lot of companies make a huge mistake in trying to do too many things too fast, and then you just catch on fire and it's over. We need to do this really well, and it's going to take us a couple more years to get the flywheel moving into a place where we feel like, okay, let's take a breath. What else do we want to do? I mean, we're involved in looking at a training facility build right now, which is a big project for us that would include an offsite training facility. Right now, we train at our stadium and we have our own locker rooms and everything, but we need an alternate training site. And so right now, that's a pretty big real estate project, and it'll include multifamily housing. We house about half our team we house in club provided housing that's furnished. Some of the people that come in here into Spokane do their own housing, but a lot of the younger players, especially, they like just being able to walk into a furnished place to live that's safe and close to the stadium. So we have a lot of things going on there, but honestly, we just need to be doing this really well, and then we can think about something else. So
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. As we wrap up here, man, for someone who's interested in sports team ownership, or even I've met some people recently who are trying to build new emerging leagues. Like, what advice
right.
would you give them on how to navigate this process?
Look, none of this is for look, you got to be used to this. This thing should have died 500 times. Okay. This should have never happened, given all the hurdles that we had to overcome. Everything from the stadium build to just signing a 20-year lease. It took a year to negotiate. Um, you have to be willing to fight every day. You can't hear no and be discouraged. Most these things are hard to do, right? They're not just expensive. It's kind of mind-boggling every single thing that you have to do. So you've got to be willing to put the work in and not take no for an answer. I mean, I talk to a lot of potential club owners who call us and want some advice and help. And I've seen some people working on these projects in other markets for 2 years, and they've lost stadium deals along the way. They've lost land deals along the way. The biggest thing about USL is that you've got to have a stadium deal. You can't operate these clubs um, if you don't control certain aspects of your stadium. So you have to be willing to just fight and have the time and energy to do it. It's really hard. I mean, it's the hardest thing that we've ever done. And Katie and I have both done a lot of pretty hard things, but this is, I would say, by far the hardest. It's not even close, not even close. So you have to be really, really strong and really want to do it. And if you don't have the passion, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it'll never happen. It'll be a failure. So you got to make sure you're doing it and getting into it for the right reasons. Also, it's pretty important.
No, I
So
appreciate that. That's probably the realest piece of advice that I've heard regarding that that
no,
question.
this,
So,
no, this, no, I'm really honest about it. Like this thing should have never happened.
yeah,
Probably, I was just really stubborn about it, and you have to be really, really bullheaded, and and then you got to go find the capital. And so, while the capital is out there, it's not a layup. You've got to be, got to have a plan. So, yeah,
yeah, for sure. Ryan, man, appreciate your
yeah.
time. Lastly, let everybody know where they can learn more about you and connect with you.
Yeah, look, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just pop over to LinkedIn and find me, but best place to go is uslspokane.com. Take a look at the club. We've got one website that covers both teams. It's pretty extensive. Our social media is, Spokane Velocity FC and Spokane Zephyr FC. You can learn a lot about what we've done by just simply going to social media and checking out Instagram. It's a fun place to kind of get the vibe for what we do and how we do things. So
Appreciate it. Thanks,
yeah.
Ryan.
All right. Thanks, Malcolm. Take care.